Hello, and welcome to the 25th Annual Iowa Women's Foundation Award Luncheon, presented by James Investment Group. Please welcome to the stage Jen Newman, Vice Chair of the Iowa Women's Foundation.
Good almost afternoon. Who is happy to be at the Iowa Women's Foundation's annual luncheon this year? It feels really good and maybe a little emotional, at least for me. So, my name is Jen Newman. I'm the chair-elect of the Iowa Women's Foundation, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here today. We chose the theme, Why, this year. You'll see that on the program. Why a Women's Foundation? Why do we support and participate in the work that helps Iowa's women achieve economic stability and success? I can't answer that for you, but I can tell you my why. And no, it is not my two daughters, Grace and Anna. Nothing wrong with that being your why, but for me, those two are gonna be fine, honestly. Like, I'm in Iowa League of Women Voters for them, but for the Iowa Women's Foundation, why I support the Iowa Women's Foundation, I'm in it for the number 70. So in 2016, the She Matters report came out, and we discovered that more than 70% of Iowa's female-led households struggle financially. 70%. And if you didn't know, female-led households is kind of code for single moms. And if you were here a couple years ago, you know that's kind of my jam. That 70% affects a lot of things. If 70% of those households are struggling, that's more than just hardship for women. It means there are women who can't go to work because they lack childcare, which often means there are employers who can't hire enough staff. It means there are women who need help and guidance to navigate a confusing system that forces them to make choices between success and assistance. It means there are children who are food insecure and can't excel in school on an empty stomach. The ripple effect of their struggle holds us back as a society. And it doesn't just affect women, but it affects their children, perpetuates generational poverty, and is completely solvable. That's my why. Because I want to find the answers, because the organizations we fund provide solutions, and because we are focused on identifying and working hard to remove the barriers that many women face. We are here for the 70%. Now, we're going to have a few options for you today to share your why and to be reminded of your why. So in front of you on your table are these frames. Right? See, mine says 70%. There's a little marker there too. So this is your opportunity to write down your why. And you can take this home with you and you can put it on your desk or in your Zoom background, wherever reminds you, your coworkers, your cat, whoever you happen to office with, of your why. So take a second to write your why the Iowa Women's Foundation matters to you on that today. Then take it home with you, and like I said, display it. So we're here for the why today. And when we think about our why, how do you support the Iowa Women's Foundation? Is it support in the form of time, talent, funding, or everything you can do to advance this cause? Everything you do goes to help women succeed. And when we make sure that everyone can succeed and we have equal footing, we all move forward together. And now the other why, lunch. Okay. I'd like to say a quick thanks to our hosts here at the Hyatt and thank their staff for their service today. You know what this is like today in today's environment, trying to staff up. So thank you to the Hyatt. And because of their attention to detail and a lot of planning that went into today's event, we are able to safely gather here and enjoy this time together. So please enjoy your lunch, and we will be back here shortly with our grantee presentations.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now resume our program. Before we welcome back to the stage Jen Newman, can you please turn your attention to the screens? Throughout the luncheon, we'll play short videos from past and current IWF grantees who are breaking down the 6 barriers to women economic self-sufficiency. Please sit back and enjoy our first grantee from the University of Iowa Labor Center and their work that they are doing in shattering the employment barrier.
The Iowa Women in Trades Network is designed to provide women with the skills, the confidence, and the connections that they need to enter and succeed in registered apprenticeship programs in the construction trades.
With this apprenticeship program, we try to incorporate a bit of mentorship into it. Through that communication, through that networking, we're able to get women maybe that are in a class together and be able to say, we have some other women who are interested in doing this. Would you want to come help them out? As we grow and develop into our different careers, there's this opportunities to become actually leadership positions. To me, the communication skills that women bring to the table is a very strong suit for women. There's that small, detailed attention that we tend to take when we are communicating, but then it also can go to another step further. Somebody's having a really bad day. We're not scared to ask about, hey, what's going on? And I think those communication skills really help women to shine on the job sites.
We were really excited to be approached by the Iowa State Building and Construction Trades Council and to receive the support of the Iowa Women's Foundation to launch a few years ago a brand new program in Iowa to really very intentionally create a pipeline and create connections for women across the state of Iowa to learn about these opportunities, to prepare for these opportunities, and the support network so that they could really succeed.
People ask me why I wanted to do this. There are not as many resources out there to help women along. And when you find somebody that can really help you out and say, don't worry, we can help you through this, it makes the world of a difference.
My why is that the Iowa Women's Foundation is supporting working class women all across the state in coming together and gaining the skills, the confidence, and the connections they need to break into new industries and new sectors of our economy and build living wage career options for women.
Please welcome to the stage Jen Newman.
All right. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, I'm back. And now we have the pleasure of our online participants now joining us online. So welcome to those of you joining us on Zoom. And as you finish up your lunch today, I ask you to turn your attention to the front where we're going to announce our 2021-22 grantees. These are the people who do the work, right? We're a women's foundation. And we, as an organization, are so proud to roll up our sleeves and help them lift. The work that is reflected in these organizations is often not the words in the headlines, or they go by without much notice from the rest of the world. But the difference, the impact they make on individual lives of women in Iowa is incalculable. We have no way of tabulating the change that they make. We read their grant reports, we make site visits, we spend time learning about their missions, but there's just no way possible to quantify their true impact. These are often unseen, invisible forces that keep things afloat and moving forward. They are the underpinnings of more women in Iowa finding their footing and having the confidence, support, or resources they need to improve their own lives and their families' lives, and by extension, so many others' lives. When we lift one woman out of poverty, provide access to childcare, mentor her through decisions, and provide the support she's lacking, we move forward together. It is our collective why. So we have 11 grantees to share with you today. And if you are here today with us, or even if you are connected to any of these grantees, I would love for you to stand and remain standing as I list off these organizational names, so that we can recognize you today, even in the smallest way, for the work that is done. All right, so our first one is Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands, Catherine McCauley Center, Easter Seals, Iowa, Girls on the Run of Eastern Iowa, Hawkeye Community College Foundation, Homes of Oak Ridge Human Services, Lutheran Services in Iowa, Opening Doors, YWCA of Clinton, the University of Iowa Labor Center, and the Women Food and Agricultural Network. Thank you. Thank you. And now I believe we have another video to follow this.
Clinton, Iowa is actually a town of 1,200 people. The effects on rural communities and the loss of childcare has really hit rural communities hard. But we were finding that there was lack of childcare and parents were having to drive distances in order to bring their children to childcare. Sometimes when the children were leaving, they ended up going to school in those other communities too. So a big part of this was establishing different ways in order to keep our students within our community and fill that need of a child care center. 3 years ago, Dawn, I invited her to come speak with my community about the possibility of establishing a child care center. From then on, we established a committee, and then we started to get organized, and we wanted to get everything prepared to start doing fundraising. In September of last year, we began fundraising. Iowa Women's Foundation was actually one of the grants we received. In 6 months, we had $1.4 million put together in order for us to build our building. All along the way, Dawn has been so wonderful. Anytime I had to present, she was right there giving me information that I could use to support with all her data and things that pertain directly to GLID. That's some of the stuff Iowa Women's Foundation is really working on, is to communicate what's going on and to make it a better place for childcare providers in general. I know, being in early childhood for years, how important those early years are. The most learning you ever have in your life is during that time. And if we don't take advantage of that early learning, we're missing a big component of what it needs to look like if we want to be successful. My reason I support the Iowa Women's Foundation, we will now have a child care center in Glen, Iowa. And Iowa Women's Foundation was there from the very beginning. They brought so much information to us, not only helping children, but also helping women all across Iowa be successful and be happy where their children are going.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to Dawn Oliver Wyan, President and CEO of Iowa Women's Foundation.
Good afternoon. I'm Dawn Oliver Wyan, and I have the privilege of being the President and CEO of the Iowa Women's Foundation. I can't tell you how exciting it is to look out into the room and see all of you here today. It's also thrilling to know that we have many of our supporters joining us virtually. They're joining us from places all across the state: Sioux City, Council Bluffs, Ames, Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, Moline, and Bettendorf. We are expanding our reach even further with attendees from Chicago and Wisconsin, too. Whether you're here in the room or you're joining us virtually, I hope that you can feel the excitement of our collective energy. And I hope that by the end of this luncheon, you are inspired to build on this momentum, that you continue to fight for women and girls however you can. When I was first asked the question, why do you support Iowa's women and girls through the Iowa Women's Foundation? I have to admit, I was a little tongue-tied. It wasn't because I couldn't think of a good reason. It was just the opposite. How could I list all of them? My head is still swimming with examples of the women and girls that I have met over the years at the Iowa Women's Foundation. I think of all the amazing things that they've accomplished and all of the barriers that they've worked really hard to break down. There are the women who came to Iowa as refugees and now are self-supporting childcare entrepreneurs. And the women who can now go to work and pursue an education because of these childcare entrepreneurs. I am reminded of the women who wake up every morning and go to work in service of others. Women who help survivors of human trafficking rebuild their sense of self-worth. And women who are blazing brave new trails for other women in male-dominated professions by offering their wisdom and friendship as mentors. There's no end to the strength, ingenuity, and compassion that these women demonstrate. Of course, my mind is also filled with other examples that aren't as uplifting. There are still many challenges that Iowa's women and girls face today. Before the pandemic, Iowa was in the middle of a child care crisis, a crisis that threatened the success of women in the workplace. Now, as our economy and communities are starting to recover, child care has never been more important and more difficult to secure. Since March of 2020, more than 50,000 women in Iowa have left the workplace, and a lack of accessible, quality, affordable childcare is one of the reasons why. According to the National Women's Law Center, female workforce participation has dropped to 57%. It is the lowest since 1988. It's easy to be defeated by these challenges, to throw our hands up and just say there's nothing we can do about it, or think we just have to accept the way things are. But the women and men in this room and those of you watching from afar don't run from a challenge. You don't settle for the status quo. You are all here because you believe in change and you know that together we can make it happen. Because of your support this last year, we expanded our Building Community Childcare Solutions Collaborative to 44 communities across the state. These incredible community task forces are now working together to increase access to childcare at the local level. They are enabling women to return to work and become economically self-sufficient. Your support allowed us to advocate for childcare solutions at the state level. This year, we joined a childcare coalition urging our legislators to use funding from stimulus packages to expand and build new child care centers and to support the child care workforce with competitive wages and benefits. We were invited to participate in the Governor's Child Care Task Force, where we recommended comprehensive long-term strategies that address the child care barrier and get people back to work. And while you may know the Iowa Women's Foundation as a statewide organization, our hard work and innovative Building Community Childcare Solutions program has gained national recognition. Last year, the Iowa Women's Foundation was asked to participate in the Economic Mobility Hub project, a project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation through the Women's Funding Network. Because of this exceptional nationwide program, our Building Community Childcare Solutions Collaborative will now serve as a framework for other states who want to build a better, more sustainable child care sector, a sector that will support our parents, our child care professionals, our businesses, and our communities. This is why I support the Iowa Women's Foundation and Iowa's women and girls all across the state, because we care, because we collaborate, and honestly, because we get the job done. Of course, like all of you here today and online, I have my own personal reasons for committing myself to this cause. As I grew up and built my career, I watched my mother struggle to make ends meet. After 20 years of marriage, she and my dad divorced. She had devoted herself to her family's future and never her own. She was so committed to the needs of others that she had nothing to fall back on when her relationship ended. As a result, what should have been a happy retirement was now spent working more hours than she should have for far less more pay than she should have. I will never forget what she went through and what it cost her. This is why I am driven to make sure all women have the skills, tools, and support that they need to be economically self-sufficient, so they never have to choose between what's right for themselves and what's right for their families. I want them to be the authors of their own story and their own future. Those are my whys. Now, before we turn things over to our keynote speaker, the former CEO and funding of the Women's Funding Network, and my dear friend, Chris Grum, I'd like to share another video from our grantee partner, the Catherine McCauley Center, showing us what they are doing to shatter the housing barrier and why they support Iowa's women and girls. Enjoy.
A few years ago, we decided that we wanted to broaden our services to not only include transitional housing, but also supportive housing. What our supportive housing services are is we have a house that women live in together. They work cooperatively to help keep the house functioning.
The supportive housing program is such an essential component for women along the continuum of homelessness. For many of these women, they come from a place where they have not been in a safe and affordable living environment. And supportive housing really allows them that environment where they can be with other women to continue to support each other along the journey.
They also have this great opportunity to be able to work together and build that connection and build that community and apply those daily skills to show that they can fulfill a lease that they have with us, so they're gaining good rental history.
For so many women, living in a communal living environment is so essential. Being alone and isolated and no longer having that community of support can really lead them back to some of the challenges that they experience.
For the women that have moved on from our transitional housing program, they're moving into permanent housing of their own. So they were able to utilize that positive rental history. Iowa Women's Foundation allows us to be able to help women reclaim their voices and rediscover who they are and who they are meant to be. That's why the work of Iowa Women's Foundation is so important. Women need to be at the table. Opportunities like this help women be able to know that they can be there, they deserve to be there, and they should be there.
The Iowa Women's Foundation aligns with Catherine McCauley Center value of empowerment, and it's so awesome to be able to work with an organization that truly gets it. So my why to support Iowa Women's Foundation is because they are truly invested in improving the lives of women and girls in our community.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the owner of Chris Grum Consulting Group and the former president and CEO of the Women's Funding Network, our 2021 keynote speaker, Chris Grum.
It used to be when I got ready to do speaking during my years of menopause, I had many little items here, fans, other things. Now, mask, my water flask, it's not vodka, in case you see me sipping from it. But it is absolutely wonderful to be here. I think I can't quite remember, but it's got to be at least 15, 16 years since the last time I was with you here at a luncheon. And so it's really great to be with you at the beginning of this new time when we're coming out of COVID and you're getting together. So I just want to give you a chance, and the people on Zoom, to give yourself a clap for being out, for being supportive, and being a part of the Iowa Women's Foundation. Now, the theme of why. This is the perfect theme to give to a speaker, because you can talk about anything. So I was very excited. And, you know, for most of you, the question of why, if you've been around children as a parent or grandparent, aunt, uncle, caregiver, the question of why is common to many conversations in explaining the meaning of the world. Whether it's a why from a 3-year-old, why they can't have their second cookie, or a why of the 10-year-old who says, why can't I wear my pajama bottoms to school? I did that for the last year. Or the why of the teenager who says, why can't I go to the concert without you being a part of the team to take care of me? Those are the why themes that we oftentimes hear. But as a part of a conversation, but today, the why is, why does the work of the Iowa Women's Foundation continue to be so important? And what you've had with a lot of these videos and so far is very much an Iowa view of the why. You've heard amazing stories of grantees. What I want to do is I want to talk about why support women and girls, gender expansive people of color across the board, not just in Iowa, but in the United States and around the globe. And why do we support gender equity as a primary target of our own personal philanthropy? Why should gender equity be at the top of our philanthropic commitments? And as I said before, it's an easy speech to have around the why because you can pretty much station it any way that you want. But I want to begin to talk about this morning is why gender equity. And let me begin by defining the phrase gender equity. Why use equity instead of equality? Well, equality means individuals and groups are given the same resources and opportunities. Equity recognizes each person has different circumstances and allocates resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Now, this is important as we keep talking. I'm going to share with you a wonderful illustration that I came upon a few years back when I was talking about this difference between equality and equity. And picture a baseball field and a high fence and 3 kids, tall, medium, short. And each kid is trying to look over the fence to watch the baseball game because they didn't want to pay for the ticket, right? And each one is standing on a box. The tall one can see way over. The medium one, eyes can see over. And of course, the short one is seen through the cracks in the fence. That's equality. Each one has a box. Each one's standing on a box. This is what equity is. Equity is when you move the boxes around. The tall one doesn't need the box to see over the fence, right? The medium one only needs 1 box to see over the fence, and the short one needs 2 boxes to see over the fence. That's the difference between equality and equity. And it's important for us to understand that as we go through coming out of this pandemic and where we want to be around women and girls. Why is it so important to talk about gender equity at the beginning of this economic recovery of hopefully the COVID crisis coming down a little bit? It's because what's happened to women and girls and other people in vulnerable situations during the COVID. The COVID pandemic has devastated lives around the world. 4.6 million people have died and counting. The pandemic has exposed huge widening gaps between economic and social inequality. The most vulnerable in society in that vulnerability, including unequal impact affecting women and girls by virtue of their gender. Equity is important because the same resources and opportunities should not be given to all women because all women didn't get the impact of the COVID pandemic, the economic downfall, etc., as other women. Some women lost their jobs and their savings. Some women could not work because they lost their childcare. Some women lost their partners to COVID and therefore lost a household income. Some women could not work because they were trying to keep up with educating their children. And finally, some low-wage workers missed their shifts because they decreased shifts, or they ended up working for such a low salary that they couldn't cover their own expenses. However, on the other hand, some women increased their bank accounts because they weren't traveling, they weren't going out and buying clothes, they weren't doing a lot of things that they normally do, so their bank accounts grew. Some women's 401ks and pension plans grew because why? Because the market went up, and so their wealth increased. Some women's home values increased because of the low interest rates. Their values went up because they were homeowners. It's this variation of scenarios that calls us to look at solutions through the lens of gender equity rather than equality. Solutions that are first and foremost about lifting up the most vulnerable and building our communities from the inside out rather than the outside in. In other words, you build a prosperous community when you build from the most vulnerable to the privileged. Does that make sense? But what have we done? We have built in many ways a community from the most privileged to the most vulnerable. And what that does, if your mind thinks about it, think about a pyramid. If you don't have a strong base, how are you going to have a strong community and a prosperous economy if everybody in that community is not a part of it, and if that base isn't strong? It's estimated by the World Economic Forum that during the COVID crisis, 39, let's see if I want to make sure I get this right, 39% of, we had 39 years of setbacks for women and girls in the world. And that's related to housing, that's related to healthcare, that's related to job opportunity. We had setbacks in the lack of sexual and reproductive services, which increased stillbirths and maternal deaths. 18 states in this country are trying to pass very restrictive abortion laws. The UN reports that there's an increase of violence towards women for up to 25%. And women, and particular BIPOC women, women of color, Black, Latina, Indigenous, etc., have been hit hard by the economic fallout of the pandemic, experiencing higher rates of COVID deaths, income loss, higher food insecurity, and struggle to pay bills. And as Dawn said before, over 50,000 women in the state of Iowa have left the market. Now, why do you think they left the market? They didn't leave the market because they didn't need the money, right? Why did they leave the market? Because either their jobs were so low paying that even having two jobs, they still couldn't pay their bills, or they didn't have a job because they had to stay at home, or they didn't have childcare. So it's really important to understand how the structural relationship in our society about gender equity plays itself out. Let's take a minute and look at the question of wage gap between men, women, between women of color. Between men and women, the average age gap is 82 cents on the dollar. So you see my dollar? That's the average. That's how much women get versus men in this code. Now, that changes radically if you're a woman of color. This is your dollar size. 52, 54% on the dollar. This is what you get. When you work the same job, the same area of interest, this is what you're giving. And then you wonder why women don't have enough money to retire on or can't pay childcare. And what happens in this situation when you have this kind of gap, and by the way, there's an interesting statistic that states that they do not see the wage gap equalizing out until 2058, if you look at how long it's taken over time. 2058. So my question to you all is, why do we accept that? I'm going to say this to you over and over again. We're more powerful, more educated, we have more influence, we have more money than we ever had as women at any time in history. And yet, we still are fighting the battle of a wage gap that is this much if you are a Black, Hispanic, or Native American woman. We're still dealing with the gap of decent childcare. And we know from what we've talked about that the fact is that childcare, this is not a complex solution, right? It's not hard to understand that you need childcare. We understand how you get childcare. What are we missing in childcare in this state? And across the country, because it's not just Iowa. What's not happening in the area of childcare when 24% of Iowans are in and I love this phrase from the study that the Iowa Women's Foundation does, are in a childcare desert. A childcare desert. Now, I contend, and this has nothing to do with my strong feelings of care and concern for men, but if men had to depend upon childcare to go to work, to get jobs, to get educated, tell me what you think childcare would be funded today. Right? Come on. There's no way we'd be struggling to get childcare across the country. There is just no way it would happen, because it would be dependent for men on doing all the things that they need to do to support their families. So this is not just about individuals. This is a systematic change that needs to take place around gender equity. And what I would say to this is, if the problem disproportionately impacts women, children, and families, then the solution should be first and foremost given to women, children, and families. Does this not make logical sense? I'm trying to be very logical here, right? So if it disproportionately impacts over here, this is where the money needs to go over here to make the change. Again, remember, we're talking about the inside-outside version of developing and supporting our society. This is about justice. And that's why fighting for gender equity is fighting for gender justice. We must be bold and courageous in this fight, and we must be willing to lift our voices for justice, open our pocketbooks for justice, get on our feet for justice, and vote for justice. For justice to access the opportunities and resources necessary to reach an equal outcome for all. So that's where equal works. That's the difference. Now, speaking out and standing up for gender equity is not about being biased towards women. Can I tell you how many of us feel guilty about supporting work for women and girls? Because really, does that mean we're the ones who are always in trouble? No. This has nothing to do with the bias for women and girls. And I support the men in this room and the men in your lives who support the work that you're doing. Give them a hand. They need to be a part of this, and we need to invite them in to be a part of this. Now, it's all again about our concept of building strength from the inside out. It's about pulling down all those barriers that were found in the study done by the Iowa Women's Foundation, lack of low employment, lack of access to education, lack of childcare, et cetera. And Dawn was talking, or I don't think it was Dawn, I think Jen was talking about that 70% number. That 70% number is 40% of women in poverty, and 30% of women in insecure situations where they are working 1, 2, and 3 jobs and cannot pay their bills. It's not like they're not working, right? They are working, and they're working hard. So the question is, why? Why do we still accept this lack of funding? As I said, we have more resources, more education, more funding than we've ever had in our history. But the question for us is, how do we merge our courage to speak out with our vision of justice for a good outcome? Well, I believe courage comes from our vision of justice. Our actions and accomplishments are only as powerful as our vision of justice for the world. Courage gives us the energy to become active and move forward on the journey. Justice chooses the path we take on that journey. For courage without justice can be a feel-good exercise, while justice without courage becomes a moment of silence never to be recovered again. They have to come together. They have to come together to build that fire that can bring the kind of change. Now, we can leave this luncheon today feeling really good about our attendance. We got out of the house, we gave a contribution, we wrote our words of why, and those are all remarkable and wonderful things. But I want to push you just a little bit further, because that's my job, because I don't live here, and once I leave, you can't come after me. Whereas all the Iowa Women's Foundation people, you know who they are, and they can talk. So I'm going to push you a little. I grew up as a Lutheran preacher's daughter with parents that understood that acts of courage need to be fueled by what I call the staff of justice. I watched courage take root when my parents made decisions that could risk both their reputations and livelihoods. And they had 7 kids, so a livelihood was kind of important. When my father, a World War II veteran who was wounded and almost lost his life in Italy, spoke and took a stand against the war in Vietnam in the 60s, when my mother, who spent her time as a nurse working in a migrant farm camp and decided that wasn't quite enough, so she decided she needed to join the grape and lettuce boycott, and she became a picketer online at one of the local stores, a Safeway to be exact. And she knew that on a regular basis, members of her congregation were going to come through those doors and see her on the picket line. Did she stop? No. She became a picket line captain. And every time your friends came to visit, or we came home from college, we all had to sign up for at least 2 hours on the picket line. That's what happens. Now, these stands were not taken because my parents grew up as activists. They were preachers' kids themselves. They came from Minnesota, one are from St. Paul, Minnesota, from North Dakota and Gunnison, Fargo, etc. So they didn't grow up with it, but rather they acted this way because they understood their calling to bear witness to unjust actions of the world. So justice is a word I grew up with. It's a part of my everyday lexicon, whether talking about how we act towards individuals, each other, or the world. I was blessed with wonderful examples. But you know, as I grew into an adult, I needed to find my own courage and justice compass. We all do. And I believe that compass dwells deep within our innermost being that first starts in our gut, goes to our heart, and then goes to our head. And you know what? Gut, heart, head. Just think about that. Gut, heart, head. That's what motivates us to act. Because whether we learned as children or in maturity, the opportunity to experience of picking up that staff of justice or just letting it lie on the roadside will always be there in front of us. For it's our gut, heart, and head where we decide to finally say we're giving back. Yet when justice comes only to a privileged few, it can be very uncomfortable and at times downright scary because it means looking in the mirror and trying to figure out, each one of us has to do this, whether we're the cause, the result, or both. Courage, on the other hand, is about risk-taking, risk of being wrong, risk of not being well-liked, and the hardest one for us as women to have, risk of being labeled an angry, out-of-control woman, risk of being challenged for our beliefs, and finally, the risk of acceptance that at times we are part of the problem rather than the solution, and that may mean being willing to change our behavior. Each of us has different paths on how we reach the intersectionality of courage and justice. But if there ever was a time to understand it and act fearlessly, it's now. How then does that integration of courage and justice impact our philanthropy or giving? Well, everybody in this room and those people on Zoom are in luck because the very essence of that work is being done by the Iowa Women's Foundation. So, you don't even have to go on the internet to find out how to do the intersectionality of courage and justice. It's sitting right here in front of you. So they've saved you a lot of time to look on the internet to see what it is. Yet, this work the Iowa Women's Fund needs to lean into its own power. And you know what that means? Increased resources, working for new laws and legislation to increase funding, and letting everyone in the state of Iowa hear your voice, boldly calling for change. We want to call on communities and public servants to begin the process of building sustainable and prosperous states from the inside out. We as women, as I've said before, have more resources, more education, all of those things. We can do it. There's no reason why we can't. So we get to my final why. Why is this the time? Well, I'm going to share with you a quote. I'm not going to tell you who made the quote because it's a person whose name I don't want to speak out loud because I don't want to give them more credence than they already have. It's a person, and if you come up to me afterwards, I'll tell you who did the quote. But it's a person who is not particularly friendly to women or gender equity. So here's the quote. "You watch," he said. "The time has come. Women are going to take charge of society. This is a definitional moment in the culture. It will never be the same going forward. The anti-patriarchy movement is going to undo 10,000 years of recorded history. It will dramatically alter the power structure." Now I say to you today, let us make this man a prophet in his own land. All we need is the courage to speak up and out. And over the years, I've been inspired to stand up and speak out when I remember the words of others before me who have gone and said and done amazing things. I have what I call my courage words, and that's where I'm going to leave you today. Here is one. The will of God, this is for me, will never take me where the grace of God cannot keep me. These are the words because for me it combines my faith and feminism together, and it's the perfect phrase to get me moving and keep me out of the fear zone. What might your courage words be? I'm going to give you 3 examples of well-known women and their courage words. First one is Maya Angelou, poet and writer. I love to see a young girl go out and grab the world by the lapels. Life's a bitch. You got to go out and kick ass. Or Ellen Page, Canadian actor, transgender woman. As a girl, you're supposed to love Sleeping Beauty. I mean, who wants to love Sleeping Beauty when you can be Aladdin? Nell McClure, never retreat, Canadian women activist. Never explain, never apologize, get it done, and then let them howl. What are your courage words? Why do you need courage words? Because courage is the road to justice, and now is the time for gender equity forces here in Iowa to be released. Join with your sisters and brothers here today and on Zoom in letting your communities know that the fight for quality childcare has just begun and will not stop until every family in the state can successfully have childcare so they can work outside the home so their kids are taken care of inside their home. The Iowa Women's Foundation today needs your courageous words, your activist intents if they're to be successful. So give generously. Trust deeply in the Iowa Women's Foundation, in the work they do. And together, with those of us here in this room, those we know in our communities, and those on Zoom, we can make a difference in the world today. Thank you very much. Please turn your eyes to the screen for the next video from the Women, Food, and Agriculture Network and see how they are shattering the barriers for mentorship.
The Harvesting Our Potential program, also known as HOP, is the Women, Food, and Agriculture Network's longest running program. It's a mentorship program that brings together aspiring women farmers and beginning women farmers with seasoned women farmers who've been farming 5 years or more. There's always been mentorships happening, and I think women are very attuned to mentoring, and I think it happens in very informal ways. The reason WFAN was created was to connect women more intentionally and to make sure that women were at the table and their voices were heard and they were visible. Women really make decisions through relationships, and so relationships with other women, ag professionals are all part of that. The mentors can pass on, these are the people you need on your team. These are the resources that you can best utilize and have helped me a lot. So mentees don't have to come in to the farming scene just totally confused. They've got those tips and tools already for them, and they have these relationships with their mentors built. And often we see that these relationships last for years, if not decades after their mentorship. Women often learn best from other women. And so I see that in all of our programming at WFAN is this desire to build community and connect, and that type of coaching and community building is so integral to how women feel empowered to move forward in their farming and ag pursuits.
The Iowa Women's Foundation, one of our first ones, they're going to turn 25 next year. We're turning 25 next year. And it's been great growing up together and having the support of the Iowa Women's Foundation.
The Iowa Women's Foundation's recognition that mentorship is so needed.
Yes.
They're not just supporting our mentorship program, but they're seeing that it's needed across Iowa is incredible. And so I think it's very unique that we have this relationship with them because they see the need, and we've been able to, support, probably close to 100 mentorships through partnership with Iowa Women's Foundation.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Stephanie Closey, a founding member of the Iowa Women's Foundation, leader for the Chicks for Change, and a national and international advocate for women and girls.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. And after the year or so that we've had, it's amazing to see a room full of people. I've been watching the late night talk shows, and I've been stunned by the people that come on the talk shows and look out at the live audience and say, oh my God, I haven't seen a live audience for almost 2 years. So it's kind of how I feel seeing all of you out there. So my why has had life and legs for decades. I began helping to create women's foundations in the mid-'70s, that last century. And in my work and personal life over these decades, I have founded, guided, developed, and funded over 50 women's funds. Thank you. Thanks. These have been throughout the United States and around the world. South Africa, the Ukraine, Hong Kong, Nepal, Brazil, Mexico, the Netherlands, England, Switzerland. You could go on and on. There are at least 40 countries that have women's funds. Most of them were also public women's funds, just like the Iowa Women's Foundation, where they had the responsibility to raise money, aggregate it, and then strategically allocate it to make a bigger difference than any single donor could make with their own small gift. Many of you have probably heard the story that moved my why to an impossibly deeper place than I could ever have imagined, when the women of Nepal, mostly without cash wealth or resources, took off their wedding bracelets one by one, put them in a pile to be bundled, to be melted down, and sold on the gold market for cash, converted into a strong international currency so that they could have the cash to build their foundation. During the civil war in Yugoslavia, I also watched the Kosovo women, and you know how big Kosovo is, tiny, do the same, but knowing that the pile of bracelets would first need to be smuggled out of Kosovo, and then the cash would have to be smuggled back in. A wildly dangerous scenario. So just imagine for a moment if at this fundraiser, and I'm giving the pitch for you to support the Iowa Women's Foundation, that I would ask at the end of my pitch for everybody just put their wedding and engagement rings on the table, and we'll just take those, and we'll make cash out of that. Yeah, no problem. Just imagine that that is how we would be supporting this foundation. Imagine the depth of that commitment. And when you see women put their lives on the line to create a women's fund, you have to ask yourself, if they believe in it so deeply, what can I learn from them about my own why? From these experiences and many, many more, and particularly also in the US, where so much of my work was, that moment of recognition included women here in the US who told me about their hands shaking as they would write to their women's fund the biggest charitable check they had ever written in their lives, whether that was stretching themselves to give $100 or it was stretching to give $1 million or more. I remember how one woman described to me how her hands and literally her whole body were shaking as she signed the documents for $1 million pledge. It was an amount she discovered that she could afford based on the assets that she held. But deep down, she didn't believe she really had that money, nor did she really own that money. Nevertheless, her why was strong enough that it took over, and with her faith in the Women's Fund that she supported, she managed to make a long-term difference in women's lives as she parted with an unthinkable amount of money. So my why is answered by my belief in the powerful international networks of women's funds and women donors, and all donors who support women's funds, who invest their money in collaborative change, that is difficult, if not impossible, to buy anyplace else. I mean, where do you just go out on the marketplace? You know, how do you Google, give me collaborative impact? You know, who do I fund to get collaborative impact? When we put our money together, it's certainly worth more than our individual contributions. The whole is definitely bigger, better, greater than the sum of the parts when we work together. And every women's fund is a whole. It is its own unique example of being a whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. We could all be giving just about the same amount of money to women's causes. It would not be the same as the impact that we're seeing on these videos today. So the second part of my task today is to convince each of you to accelerate your journey from being deliberately caring and kind to being and finding more ways to be what I would call desperately strategic, hungry for impact, committed to making generations of change. If you're ready to be desperately strategic, then your Women's Fund, the Iowa Women's Foundation, is probably the best partner you will ever find. If your why includes but extends beyond kindness and caring, if you want a truly better long-term condition in the world, then it's time to hitch your wagon to a funder built for impact, or at least escalate the partnership you already have. Examine your why. Go back to those little things you started to scribble on at the beginning of the luncheon, and ask yourself, is my why all that I want it to be? Deep down, what am I looking for in terms of more ways to give this world and its unequal systems a kick in the ass? If so, if you're a person who wants more, consider your level of giving and try multiplying it up to a number that you can afford, but maybe barely. Kick it up as high as you can and try it out to see how that feels. What if I put in the maximum? What if I put in just as much and as far as I could go, but I knew that what I was buying was a generation and more of change? Remember, even from a self-centered point of view, the most selfish point of view, the quality of our lives is the downstream product of the quality of life of all those women and families upstream. Are you waiting for more good to flow into your life? If so, you better get the upstream in shape. If it's bad up there, it's not going to get better down here. So join me today in making a gift or pledge that will make your hands shake at least a little. And don't be afraid to multitask while the rest of the program goes on. We'll be collecting the envelopes at the end of the event. And if that isn't enough persuasion, please remember that we are just amazingly lucky recipients of the James Investment Group. And I think it's now, I don't know, we figured out this morning, almost 8 years or more, that the James Investment Group has offered a match at our lunch. So if you give today, all the contributions collected up to $10,000 will be matched by the James Group. And we thank and send our love to Jeremy James and Lois James for that generosity. So if I don't go soon, they're going to yank me off. So before I go, I'm going to be turning the stage back to Jen. You'll see her next, I think. But I'll introduce the next video, which is Horizons, and they'll be telling us about how they're taking the transportation barrier to women's economic equality and trying to make the changes needed for women to have full economic participation. So thank you very much for giving me this little bit of time today to persuade you as best I can.
A story that I tell a lot. I worked at a child care center, but the child care center that I worked at didn't accept the kind of payment that I had to offer for child care. So what that meant for me was that I had to take my children to one child care in order to go work at another all day. I was riding the bus with my children in the morning to downtown. We would take a transfer to their child care center. I would drop them off, then wait for the next bus to show up at their child care center, ride that downtown, and then take a transfer to my job. And then we would reverse the process at night. So it was actually 8 buses a day in order for everybody to get where they needed to go and for me just to work every day. Neighborhood Transportation Service has been serving this community for over 25 years. Our pilot project is intended to serve women, particularly those who have children who are still in childcare and may need a ride to that childcare on the mother's way to work. Our program costs the individuals who ride only $6 per ride. We allow people the accessibility to schedule an on-demand ride to the places that they need to go. For a person who has barriers to transportation, that affects so many other aspects of their lives. It impacts where you're able to live. It impacts where you're able to work, where you're able to send your children to school. It impacts where you're able to choose your childcare. So this really expands opportunities for women to make choices about all of those things. The reason why I support Iowa Women's Foundation is their commitment to ensuring that the women across our state have the best opportunity to succeed. Iowa Women's Foundation has been instrumental not only in bringing the awareness to the community about our childcare crisis that we're in. They've been instrumental in creating for a lot of organizations opportunities to help meet that challenge. The funding that we received from them has allowed us to create this pilot in which we can provide these childcare rides. There are so many ways that our program is supportive of women in our community, really having more agency over their lives and over the trajectory of their family.
Please welcome to the stage, back to the stage, Jen Newman.
There it is. So I don't know about all of you, but when Chris was speaking, my heart was pounding. That was incredible. And then Stephanie got up and I was ready to throw my wedding ring into the middle of the table at that point. I didn't, if anybody sees Doug later today. So our goal today is to get you thinking about your why. If you weren't thinking about your why when you came in, you are thinking about your why right now. Why does our work matter? Why does the success of Iowa's women and girls matter? So with us today for the second year is Alicia Monet, a female musician and vocalist who is here to share her talents and her why with us. And I'd say that if you leave today not inspired by the collective strength and force of those gathered here in this room, you should probably just stop at your doctor's on the way home. Just get things checked out. So before I hand over the mic to Ms. Monet, I'm going to ask you all to share your why in one more way, besides writing a check, which is very important. One that will perfectly illustrate that we may all come with different stories, backgrounds, motivations, and whys. But when we link our arms together, we move forward as one. So on the screen, I hope, there we go, you'll see directions so you can share your why. So this will build a word cloud. So you can submit as many answers as you like, and these words will show up on the screen, and as the words are repeated, they'll appear larger. So it should have the directions there at the top. And those who are attending virtually may also participate. At the end, we'll have a word cloud. Ooh, good one. I like that one right off the bat. At the end, we'll have a word cloud that shows the diversity and commitment of this moment, this crowd, and we'll be able to take those different whys and keep driving our work forward with your help. And with that, I am giving the microphone to Ms. Monet.
Anything you want done, baby, I'll do it naturally, 'cause I'm every woman be afraid to clap y'all hands, okay? Or shrug your shoulder or something. I'm just gonna look at the words with y'all. It's beautiful. Wow. Future, power. Women, we matter, y'all. I'm every woman, it's all in me. Anything you want done, baby, I do it naturally. I'm every woman, it's all in me. I can read your thoughts right now, every word from A to Z. Whoa, 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 whoa. I can cast a spell of secrets you can tell. Mix a special groove, put fire inside of you. Anytime you feel danger or fear, instantly I will appear. 'Cause I'm every woman, it's all in me. Anything you want done, baby, I do it naturally. Whoa. I can sense your needs like rain unto the seas. I can make a rhyme of confusion in your mind. And when it comes to that good old-fashioned love, I've got it, I've got it, I've got it. I'm every woman, it's all in me. Anything you want done, baby, I do it naturally. I'm every woman, it's all in me. I can read your thoughts right now, every word from A to Z. Whoa, 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 whoa. I ain't bragging, 'cause I'm the one. Just ask me and it shall be done. Don't bother to compare, I've got it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I see some of y'all clapping. I feel like y'all nervous. There you go, honey. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. Oh, I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. Oh, I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. Oh, I'm every woman. I'm every woman. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Can you please give Alicia another round of applause for that beautiful, inspiring song? Thank you. At this time, can you please turn your attention to the screens for our final grantee video spotlight from the Iowa Women's Foundation grant partner, Girls Incorporated, who is demonstrating how they are working with girls to shatter the education and training barrier.
Eureka is a National Girls Inc. program in which teen girls spend the mornings of 4 weeks during the summer on a college campus learning about STEM and STEM careers. And as much as possible, those opportunities are led by and guided by female faculty members. This, of course, is a wonderful model for girls to be inspired by women who are actually doing this work, who are mentors and role models. And that is the why right there. So we know that the career part of this is really, really important. We know that the college aspirations are very important. We know, in fact, that STEM is critical for girls, but none of that will happen. None of it will come to fruition if girls are intimidated by a college campus or by the folks on that campus. If they have a level of comfort, if they know that that place is something that is for them, whether they are first-generation college students or indeed first-generation Americans, that's what Eureka does for our girls. We want girls to have confidence in not only what they are already doing, but what they can do. We want to encourage their curiosity. We really want to empower them to discover all the great things about the potential of their future. What happens when you become a grantee of IWF is far more than just receiving a check. Beyond that funding, there is a level of support and like-mindedness that is really different than any other foundation that we've worked with, or really other donors that we've worked with. And to me, that's critical when you're starting a project or when you're trying to continue a project that's been successful and you want to maintain that level in the future. When we know that we have strong, supportive role models, mentors, women behind us, we're never going to try and stop us.
Please welcome back to the stage Dawn Oliver Wyan.
We did it. For those of you who've been holding my hand for the last couple of weeks, thank you. Wow, what a day. I am so thankful. Thank you, Chris, for coming and being with us today. Thank you, Jen, for your guidance, your leadership, and your support. And Stephanie, you know how I feel. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do for the Iowa Women's Foundation. Everyone's inspiring words. Thank you all for all that you do for women and girls everywhere. And thank you, Alicia, for sharing your talents and once again ending our event on a powerful and uplifting note. Of course, none of today's program would be possible without the hard work, time, and energy of all of our committee's volunteers who throughout 2021 have worked really, really hard. I would like to ask all of you to please stand. Our board of directors, our advisory council, all of our committee members, our grantee partners, everybody who's had a part in making today successful. We have over 250 volunteers. I see no one standing. Come on, get up. I know who you are. You know who you are. Come on. Your efforts are truly appreciated. Before you leave this afternoon, you know I'm going to do this. This is what I do all the time. I'd like to ask each of you to do 3 things for me. First, like and follow the Iowa Women's Foundation on Facebook and Twitter. We will post photos from today's event on our Facebook page. Be on the lookout for pictures of yourself. Please tag yourself and share with your friends and family. Second, share your why with a friend, a colleague, or a family member, and ask them why they support Iowa's women and girls. Start a conversation, engage with the issues, and never stop asking questions. Finally, I would not be doing my job if I didn't ask this third and final thing. Please support the Iowa Women's Foundation on behalf of all of Iowa's women and girls with a gift today. Help us meet Lois and Jeremy James' match for the 8th year in a row. Thank you. You can go online and use the QR code that's on your pledge card,
in your program, or you can leave your donations in the envelopes that have been provided to you with the young women who will be standing at the door when you leave. Together, we can improve the lives of all of Iowa's women and girls. Again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for attending in person or virtually. Please take home copies of the ovations that are on your table. They are yours to keep. The flower arrangements are our gift to the person at your table whose birthday is closest to today. And if you lose out on that, there are some extra ones in the lobby, so please feel free to help yourself. Lastly, be safe, stay healthy, and thank you.